Good morning, everyone.
Hold on, I haven't let everybody in the waiting room yet.
And the recording.
Yeah, I might get distracted with the music and they want to listen to the music.
Good morning, everyone. Welcome to the Entrepreneurship Seminar. I'm Lisa Tumbleson Davis, and I'm with ABCAP's Business Department. This morning, we have 3 guest speakers with a lot of valuable information for you. Before we start the presentations, I'll give you a little bit of information about what ABCAP does for small business owners. ABCAP's Business Development Department offers training and technical assistance for small business owners. We work with startup and current businesses to provide a variety of trainings and technical assistance. Some of our trainings consist of a business plan class, financial literacy training, QuickBooks, Microsoft Excel. We have a website design class where small business owners can create a create the website during the 2-day training and learn how to maintain that website. We also have a variety of social media classes. We offer Facebook, Instagram, Pinterest, YouTube, and we have a basics of social media class. We offer other classes like business photography and direct sales, selling on e-commerce marketplaces, and we are a Grow with Google partner, so we can offer a variety of Google trainings also. We also offer technical assistance for small business owners who needs help with writing their business plan, marketing, or setting up their business, or any other types of business related help. So I will put my contact information in the chat. I'll put my name and email and phone number, and you can contact me at any time to find out about our trainings and to find about the technical assistance that we offer. All right, so we'll start the morning off with our first presenter, which is Maria Daniels. Maria is the CEO and founder of Reset Business Consulting. Maria finds great joy in rural development and is on the local and state chambers of commerce in Ohio and Kentucky. Ultimately deciding to make Reset's home base a renovated bank building in Russellville, Maria strategically made this decision to serve as a case study for the state of Ohio, so to potentially expand rural economic development in other small Ohio towns. Her space also serves as a co-working space with a newly established coffee bar that Maria also helped start. Maria is all about local businesses, and she absolutely puts her money and her time where her mouth is. Outside of rural economic development, Maria finds a great deal of passion in working through messy businesses to find out where their areas of opportunity lie. Making masterpieces out of messes is absolutely Maria's sweet spot. Outside of her business consulting company, Maria is also an integrative nutritionist and herbalist, and is passionate about the wellness world and sustainable agriculture. Now I will turn it over to Maria.
That's a lot of Marias in one paragraph, probably 3 paragraphs at that point. My team wrote that and they did a great job. And when she asked for me to send something, I just sent what they wrote. That's a lot of uses of my name. So I was over there like, oh wow, that's Maria. So for all of you that don't know me, obviously my name is Maria Daniels, and we do have Reset Business Consulting. Now the home base is in Russellville, which for all of you that don't know, I kind of had my office in several locations for the last few years since establishing it, which we'll get to why that is in a few minutes, because that really kind of goes into the whole purpose of our discussion today and about rural economic development, because there are a lot of challenges out here that, well, if you live out here, you probably already know, but a lot of people that are not in this area may not really realize exactly what is going on in the rural areas. To give you a good example is I've been involved in the Ohio Chamber in Columbus for a while, and I know I've talked to Missy about this numerous times even, but we are a part of a rural economic development small business committee that meets, has been meeting virtually, but a lot of the discussions that go on there to help boost economic development and economic growth in these small areas, they're not gonna work here. And as I listen to a lot of these discussions, a lot of the points that are made are the great points. And, they're in some areas they would work great. But I know a lot of the challenges here because I've experienced them myself, as I'm sure most of you all listening today have as well. And a lot of those, while they're well-meaning, there's no real way to get those to work in super small areas like Russellville, for example. Let me kind of rewind a little bit. I'll kind of give you kind of a little bit of backstory about how I got started. I did work corporate marketing for a while, and I obviously worked corporate mindset and all that kind of stuff. During that time. And if you're wondering where all the integrated nutrition, all that kind of stuff came from, I did that as well for many, many years up in the city. When I moved out here, I got remarried. My 12-year-old's autistic. So having a special needs kid puts a little bit of an extra challenge in a family dynamic, and it became very necessary that I leave my 9-to-5, salary-based job and work, from home. So I started out by doing that just by freelancing, because honestly, I wasn't sure what I could do out here, because a lot of people that work corporate, they drive to the city. They're driving to Columbus, they're driving to Cincinnati, they're driving to these bigger areas because that's where the dollars are most of the time. So whenever I had to leave and start working from home, I wasn't sure what to do, honestly. I wish I knew about ABCAP, and I think that's a lot of it. Is there's a lot of people don't realize the things that are out here right now. I didn't know. I had no idea. I didn't know ABCAP existed. I didn't know what all the chamber did. A lot of these things I was unaware of, which kind of goes into one of the points of, one of the hurdles that are out here, which is just connectivity. Where even though, there's a lot of people out here, and we have a lot of skill sets, and there are programs available, a lot of people don't even know about them because we're not as connected out here as they are in the city. So back to my story, I ended up freelancing for a while, and I was pretty much doing anything. Because, when you go from making dollars to making no dollars, you're pretty much going to do anything. So I was like, oh, you need me to kind of do that? I'll do a website. Great, I can do that. I was charging very little because a lot of those skills I had not done before. I started doing logos. I'd never done a logo before. My first logos are hysterical. I've actually showed those. I wish I brought it today, but I didn't. It's bad. It's really bad. It looks like my 8-year-old drew it. And somebody paid me $20 for it. And I feel like I need to find them and be like, I'm so sorry. So it was horrible. But, a lot of these things actually made me take courses and classes to learn these skills. So it wasn't all in all a bad thing. But point is that I was just looking for something to be able to do. So I got the idea. I was like, well, I know what I do well. It wasn't logos. I know what I do well. Let me start really working on that angle. So I ended up starting my business, but I got all excited like we do when we start a business, right? I bought the pens, I bought the shirt, I bought all the things, and I got everything ready. And then it was like, okay, there's no people to be able to offer my services to, because I hadn't figured out how to connect out here. I knew people in the city. So I ended up really having my business get its start by making my connections in the city. So I ended up establishing an office in Erlanger and in Covington, which if you all know is in Northern Kentucky. And I ended up being able to really start to get kind of boots on the ground action with people figuring out that, what I had to offer in the world of business and marketing. And it took a little bit, but I lived out here. So there for the longest time, I'm having to do like a lot of us do, right? Commute back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. And what I was looking for out here was that same connectivity. In the city, they have places where you could do, you can go in and have a meeting, you can go in and have a cup of coffee, you can go in and set up a seminar, a meeting like we're doing today. And out here, I couldn't find anything like that. I couldn't find anything to kind of get my boots on the ground action that I was needing in this area. So I ended up finding this old bank, for those of you that don't know, it's old Fifth Third Bank in Russellville. And I started thinking about creating this business hub. So people thought I was crazy. There's a few people still probably think I'm crazy, but my thought process on it was to establish what I needed. And what I found out in the years since I started my business that many people are needing, especially out in these rural areas. So I was able to get possession of the building, and we started renovating. And my idea was to be able to, create a safe spot for businesses to come in and again, have a meeting, have a workshop. We do rent out private offices. We just opened the cafe. That's been a long, long process. Got a place to grab a cup of coffee and a bite to eat while you're having your meeting. And as basic as that seems, my theory behind it was if you give these small communities somewhere to have that meeting, somewhere to learn a skill, somewhere to be able to, have a cup of coffee and sit down with a prospective business associate, that may be a small thing, but it really can create a ripple effect in the community. And it's something that for a while, as I'm talking about it, before it got to this point, as I'm talking about it, I really was trying to get the state involved on a larger level of being able to establish, dollars to be able to make it happen, because it's not been a cheap process. And for all of you that are in these rural areas, there's a lot of, we mentioned connectivity kind of being one issue. Another thing is just being able to find capital. You can't do it the atypical ways as you can, just because the valuation isn't there in a lot of the properties like it is in the city. So trying to get funding to be able to renovate the building. I've renovated it all out of pocket. The dollars weren't available because the way that they look at valuation on a property, it's hard to make that work out here. They typically will look at all the surrounding properties, take the valuation, and that's what they quote unquote deem, property value worth. So that made it to where I was expending it out of pocket, which I was able to do, but not everybody has the other businesses to be able to feed, their projects. So that's the reason for the case study. I know Lisa mentioned that I've been creating a case study for the state. That's where that idea comes from. It's just because, again, figuring out that there was this broken piece, this need that was there. Lots of people out here, and I've talked to lots of you at this point now, lots of people out here have great business ideas. They have great businesses. And what's missing is for somebody to realize that just because we're out here, we're not in the city, that there's still, value there. And to be able to look at some of these little towns to say, okay, well, how do we really increase the economic development? I mean, that's a word that's thrown around a lot now. But how do we, I'm sweating, so let me take this up. How do we increase economic development in these areas that, on paper don't look like they're as valuable as they truly are, right? So in little small areas like Russellville, you think of some of them like Ripley and Sardinia and, Winchester, and I'm trying to think of some other ones, they're all escaping me right now, but some of these little towns, right? There's tons of these buildings that have just been forgotten. My theory is if you was to take those buildings and dollars were to be allotted, and maybe in a form of a grant, to be able to renovate these buildings and create this business hub to, again, for people to come in for an interview, be able to come in for a meeting, be able to come in for, some type of trainings, establish a coffee shop that maybe funds the building. Because that was my goal with that, is to be able to help it fund what's going on in here. You create this business hub where it works like its own community, within the building. What would that do to an economy in that area? Because that was what I found by working in the city, is that was already established. That connectivity was already there. And I've asked myself why that is. And I think, this is probably not testable approval, but this is my opinion. I think it's because, in the city, there's obviously more people. And they automatically know that part of being more people is more competition. And I know Lisa and I were talking about this the other day about that same idea, is if you already know that there's competition, then you become very aware that there needs to be a level of collaboration that's involved. And it's funny because even though I'm in the world of marketing, I teach collaboration. You have to know your competition, your competitors, of course. You need to figure out what's going on in the market. But where you really make your impact is the level of collaboration, because there's one thing that you have that nobody else has. No matter what, it doesn't matter. And Paul Hall's back here and he has an insurance company. Lots of people have insurance companies, but there's one thing that Paul's going to have that nobody else is going to have. That's going to be his own mindset on things, right? And I can do marketing and 1,000 other people can do marketing, but there's gonna be one thing that I do that nobody else does. And it's gonna be from my own mindset, from my own personality. We put a level of ourselves into every single thing we do. And if we think about it from that level, then there's really no competition, not really. And so if we already are coming from it from that angle, there needs to be this level of collaboration, because when that happens, and I've seen it happen, in Huntington, there would be 10 people that did the exact same thing I did. But if I had something going on, those 10 people were also going, I can help you. What do you need? Do you need me to help set up? Do you need me to set up tables that morning? It was different to me. It was something that I never experienced. And I think that while there's so many caring people out here, I think there has never had to be that level of competition because there's less people. That I think if we were to really think about it from such a level of being able to collaborate more, to be able to kind of be under the same hub more, I think we'd really start to see this level of, well, collaboration, but also it would push the economic development in areas that I don't think anything else would be able to do. And so this has become a big passion of mine. And if you ask my team, and actually, well, what you read, my team wrote. So it's something I've been preaching for, I feel like, forever at this point. And it's become probably my biggest passion. I do, I love my wellness world, and it'll kind of always be my passion world, but economic development can change lives. Rural economic development can change lives. We've watched as people lost jobs. We've watched as, I watched this building fall into the road out here we're on 125, just because there's no upkeep on it. There's no dollars for the upkeep on it. And it's sad to watch these tiny little towns literally just fall into disrepair, fall into pieces. And I talk to people enough that I know people want it to be different, but they're not sure where to start. And I think that's why, my biggest thing here lately has been to really kind of share my experience, my story from on this side of things, because it has not been an easy road to even get to this point, because there's no roadmap, right? There's no roadmap for what I've done so far out here. And we've still got so many things that I would love to do. But, I think by compiling this case study for the state, it's really giving a real, true, eye-opening experience as they're talking about rural economic development, as they're talking about what to do for these small areas, as they're talking about all these things that before I'd sit through these meetings and think that's not going to work where we're at, they would have a real, true experience of what can be done and what that would do. Because I've already seen it start to happen. Just since we've opened the cafe, I've watched as Russellville has kind of had breath breathed into it again. It's, people are on the sidewalks. People are coming in and sitting up front and meeting people that they haven't seen in forever because there's a place to sit and have a cup of coffee. And it seems like such a little thing that, you think, well, that couldn't do anything, but it does, and it is. And it's things like that that start to make people think, well, I could do something too now, because I've told my story a million times at this point. And for all of you that have listened to my podcast, you've probably heard all of it. I've not had an easy road by any stretch of the imagination. I've grown up, I grew up super poor, talking, when I was real little, I'm for a food poor. I got married very young. I have 7 children. One's autistic. I've had marital issues like a lot of people do. And the reason I share those kind of things, even in my business world, is because I want people to look at my life and not to say, wow, she's got it all together and that's why she's done ABC. I want them to look at my life and say, wow, she's a hot mess and she's still able to do this. I can do it too. And I think that's the biggest thing for me. And when I talk about marketing, I talk about personal branding, I talk about authenticity, I talk about real world experiences. And that's something that when I went to school for marketing, that was not in any of the education I got, right? That was actually something when I worked corporate, that was the opposite of what we were supposed to show up as. We were supposed to show up every day with our mask of perfection on, showing up like we had it all together, no matter if our personal life was, in flames at home. And that, for me, was very exhausting. And I think that's why, in what Lisa read, it talks about how I like messy situations. I love the messy stuff. I like the broken people. I like the broken stuff. I love the underdogs. And I think that's why I like rural economic development so much, is because we're the underdogs. It's a lot easier to make it in the city. I was able to build my business with no problem in the city. it's been a little bit harder to do it out here. But out here is where I want to be. And that's the reason when I decided to close my offices in Covington down, it was right before COVID, so in retrospect, that was actually a fabulous idea. At the time, I didn't know all that was going to happen. But when I decided to do that, I decided if I was really going to be all in, I needed to be all in. And it was terrifying because it is a little harder out here. But out here is where I wanted to be. And I knew that the people out here needed to see a real example of somebody that was falling on her face pretty much every single day, but standing up, dusting herself off and keeping on going anyway, because I think that's what it's going to take. That's one of the things I think out here that we have that a lot of people in the city don't, is we've got that grit because we've not had it the easiest out here most of the time. And we've got that determination that, you know, is going to be able to be a catalyst to be able to make other things happen. And so, you know, when you're thinking about, you know, what you want to do and what can I do and your dreams and your goals and all these things, and it seems so overwhelming and it seems like there's no chance that it can happen, I want you to kind of knock that out of your head because it can't happen. And I think out here, a lot of people have the misconception that we're too far out to really do much good, to really make things work, to make things happen. And, you know, I want this place, this building, to be the proof, kind of the beacon, to be the light that says that it can happen anyway. And, you know, as we continue on to renovate, we haven't even finished renovating upstairs, but as we continue to renovate, we have some more things that we're going to be sharing with you all. Well, I'll go ahead and say anyway, we're going to be putting an Airbnb upstairs. I'm involved with the chamber and the travel and tourism committee, and I know that that's a big issue, is just beds. Where do people stay when we have events? So that's another thing that we're going to try to tackle. And yeah, you know, one bed, people are like, oh, it's not going to make a difference. But if everybody was to kind of do one thing to make a difference, it would make a huge difference. So, you know, I think for me, when you talk about rural economic development, you need to think about, what can I do today? One thing, just one thing. What can I do today that would make a difference for my area? It doesn't have to be something big like renovating a building and making everybody think you're insane. You know, it could be something as small as joining the chamber, or, you know, sharing the social media post of your friend down the street that, you know, just started their business, or, you know, stopping by when they do the ribbon cuttings and just showing your support. It doesn't have to be large things, but tiny things would make a difference. And if you're curious about some tiny things that you can do, I actually have a list. I would love to give that to you on some small things that you can do, because it doesn't take a lot. And I think a lot of people think that it takes dollars and, you know, all those things to make things happen. And obviously when you have dollars, it can make it go faster, but support, collaboration, community, you know, those are the things that we do have out here, that it just takes talking about it and asking, you know, somebody, what can I do to help? You know, such a small little thing can make such an impact. And I get windies. You're going to tell me time-wise if I need to shut up.
You're good.
Okay.
No, you're fine.
So, okay, do you want me to keep going? Or you want me to stop? And do you all have questions?
I haven't seen any questions in the chat room yet, but if anybody does have questions, please put them in the chat and we'll make sure that.
Yes, I forgot to mention that.
I
Sorry.
do have a book that I want to mention, and maybe you're familiar with it. It's called Hollowing Out the Middle.
Oh, I have
And
not
it
heard
talks
that one.
about what has happened all across the country as towns have fallen in disrepair, as, you know, people have gone more toward the city. And it talks about exactly, it's almost like you wrote the book. It's talking a lot about the same type of thing. You know, how can we renovate, revitalize our small communities?
Absolutely. I think so many times we accidentally live in such a throwaway society. And I don't think it's on purpose. I don't think anybody thinks about, I want to be a throwaway society. I don't think it happens like that. But if you think about it, we live in very much a throwaway society. It just kind of accidentally happens. And I think that's why, you know, even if you look at my two worlds, my passion worlds, I say, you know, I have economic development and stuff on the side, which is the business side. I love sustainable agriculture. People that know me personally know I am like the goofy worm girl. I love worms. I love soil. I'm out there playing in my garden, my plants. I have a worm, like vermicomposting worm bed out here back in the back parking lot. I love that kind of stuff. Why is that? It's because they take something that's thrown away and they turn it into something that's gold. Worms will break down our, you know, trash. They'll break down our you know, our coffee grounds, our, you know, food leftovers, our, you know, brown paper products. They'll break it down, and then what they give us is something that goes on our gardens and nourishes the plants. So, you know, it's something that sounds like it's completely opposite worlds, but to me, it's the same. It's taking something that looks like it should be garbage, it's throwaway, it's, well, that's not any good anymore, and turning it into something that's wonderful. And so, you know, when I look at these, I actually see the same thing. I mentioned earlier that I love the underdogs. I am the underdog. You know, and I know a lot of you that are listening today, you are the underdogs to it. I've had people come to me when they've heard my full story, which I'm not gonna bore you with today, but you know, when they've heard my full story, they're like, wow, and they pick out pieces and they're like, I didn't think anyone else had been through that too. And we've all been through crap, you know. I'd say all of you could tell, you know, traumatic stories and, you know, reasons why, you know, you could have given up or should have given up or whatever. But the fact that you didn't, you know, is not only inspirational, but it teaches that other person that, you know, they don't have to give up too. And I think that's become my calling. My calling has become to be that, again, that beacon for people that are the underdogs, people that have had the messiness, people that have had the brokenness, to be able to say, wow, okay, well, she came out, she told her story and she was able to do it too. And that we're able to take up that messiness, that garbage, that stuff that's no good and turn it into gold, just like the worms turn all this stuff into gold. And yeah, I see that same thing for these little areas that, you know, I had friends of mine before we started actually getting this all renovated. We already had possession of the building. We had started doing a little bit of renovation, but it didn't look like it does now. And they came out and they're like, why in the world are you putting so much time and money into something in the middle of nowhere? Like, and I'm like, well, I live in the middle of nowhere. This is where I want to be, and I've seen it. And I think that's the thing with a lot of us, we see things for a reason. Like, I knew what this could be, and I knew what this community needed, and I knew what I needed. I did this just as much just to prove that I could do it as I did for all the reasons that I mentioned before. You know, I think sometimes all we need is something to be able to give us that next reason to go on, right? That next reason to say, okay, well, I didn't give up and look what happened. And it's been a hard road. I mean, I've fell on my face, I don't know how many times, even with this project, there's things that come up that you know, you can't plan for. You know, we wanted to put the coffee bar up front and figured out that there was no way to get that plumbing back to the sewer. So I could have quit then. I could have quit after I put so much money into it and time and effort when they said, no, you can't do that. And I could have just gave them, said, I guess we're not getting a coffee bar. But instead I'm like, okay, well, what can we do? I can't do that. What can I do? So we decided to put a kiosk style in the back. Wasn't the original plan, you know? And I think that's the biggest thing is that, you know, out here, we're going to get a lot of no's. We're going to get a lot of, I mentioned even with Capital, trying to get a loan on this place, they were like, we're not going to be able to give that for it because there are all these buildings in that area don't equal what the asking price is. I was like, well, what building in this area is like this building, you know? So it's little things like that that I could have gave up. I could have said, oh, well, I could have, you know, walked away, but I didn't. And I think there's lots of ways to do things. And I think being resourceful and not taking no for an answer and figuring out, okay, well, I can't do this, but what can I do? And I think that's an ability that we have out here. Most people out here are super resourceful, and you don't even realize it. And that is a skill that you don't learn, you know, in university. That is not a skill that can be taught. That's a skill that you pick up just from life experiences. And I never looked at my resourcefulness as a skill until I've had people that I've done jobs for in the past. I had a client that I had to reset that's what they kept saying. How are you so resourceful? And I'm just like, I don't know. I don't know, because I didn't look at it as a skill. And I've noticed as I've worked with people in the city, and it's not knocking my from the city, but as I worked with people from the city and I've worked with people out here, that's another difference that I see that's actually a positive for people here. Resourcefulness. You know, you've had to think outside of the box. You know, we hear this, like, I even, like, I'm saying out of the box marketing, because, you know, use that now, because out of the box marketing, because it's like, you know, there's the things you can do, you know, you can write the list of the things you can do, but what if that doesn't work, right? What if you do the list of steps and you're not getting anywhere? Then what do? You know, if you're only going by the list, you're dead in the water. But that's where resourcefulness comes in. And that's something I notice out here as I get people that work for me in this area, resourcefulness. And that is a skill that is so valuable. So, you know, when you're talking about how do we grow these economies, how do we grow these small areas, how do we renovate the broken into something that's beautiful, it can be done. It takes resourcefulness. It takes not taking no for an answer. You know, it takes, you know, doing it anyway when people think you're crazy. It takes all those things. But what it really takes, first of all, is just having a heart to really want to make that difference and make that change, because your heart's got to be in it. That's one of the biggest things that I see business owners make, is they get into their business for the wrong reasons. I will, like, for me personally, there's a few types of business owners that I won't work with in my business. And one of those is the ones that are only doing it for the dollars. And the reason is it's not normal money. We get into business because we need money, right? You know, I need money to live, to pay my bills or whatever. But if you're only doing it for the dollars, your heart's not going to be in it, and you're only going to get so far. And a lot of, when I do my intake forms for a lot of my clients that I take on, there's a lot of questions I ask, and I'm trying to gauge that. And I've had people say, well, why do you do that? And the reason I do is because it tells me, number one, a lot about that business owner, and a lot about if we're going to, you know, work well together, right? Because I'm not a fit for everybody. Everybody's not a fit for me. It took me a long time to figure that out, that not everybody likes me, and that's okay, but it's just how it is. And, you know, when you get into business only for the dollars and your heart's not in it, there's always going to be a piece missing from the business. And I have a hard time helping businesses like that. And I think that's one of the reasons why this building has been able to be such a, I started to say easy task, that would be a lie, such a, I guess, positive task for me, is that my heart's in it. I want it to be there for the community. I want it to be there for the people. I want it to be able to make businesses be able to thrive. You know, you can come here and have a meeting. You can come here and do an interview. You can come here and do like we're doing today, do a workshop or a seminar or whatever. You can do all those things, and you can show all those other communities that have buildings like this that they can do it too. And, you know, I have had a couple of people say, well, why are you telling how you do all this kind of stuff? Because what if somebody does the same thing, you know, like at Ripley? I'm like, good, I'll show them exactly how I did it. What if they want to do the same thing in Sardinia? Good, I'll show exactly how I did it. Because I want people to do these things. We need more community centers. We need more coffee shops. You know, we need more availability to stop really thinking about the competition of things, and really to start to think about the collaboration. I have people come in here all the time to the coffee shop. They'll say, they're starting a coffee shop. I heard they're starting a coffee shop in Georgetown. Like, good, tell them to give me a call, because I had some hurdles that I had to jump through, and I will tell them exactly how they need to do it. And they just kind of look at me like, because they're thinking, and I know why they're thinking it. They're thinking, oh my gosh, well, that could take away business. You know, if somebody's driving from Georgetown to get coffee in Russellville, they put a coffee shop in Georgetown, they're not going to drive to Russellville. But I don't look at it like that. First of all, I'm a coffee addict. I love coffee, and I go to all the coffee shops. I will leave here and I'll drive to Cafe Stone in Maysville or Park Cafe in Maysville, because again, the people that are making it, it's going to be different. It doesn't matter if they use the same exact type of recipe. It's going to be different, because we're all putting our own, you know, personality, our own experience, our own everything into everything we do. And I think it's going to take some time for people to figure out why I think the way that I do. But I actually get excited when they say stuff like that now, and then kind of get excited with the look on their faces. They're like, because they probably are like, that lady up there is completely insane. And I am a little bit insane. But I also want to really show people that I don't only say it, I live it too. There's nothing that I have that's secret. There's nothing that I have that I won't show you how to do. Because you're never going to do it exactly the same way I do, because you're not me. And I'm never going to do it the exact same way you do, because I'm not you. And I think if we all kind of wrap our heads around that, I think the world could be a better place. And I know it sounds cliche and, you know, far-fetched and silly, but it's that butterfly effect, right? It only takes one flapping of the wings, they say, to cause our hurricane somewhere else. So what if we was to flap our wings in such a way where we spread hope, and we spread love, and we spread encouragement, and we spread just the idea that no matter where you're at right now in your life experiences or anything, that dream that you've been holding on to since forever, that you could do it. And that doesn't mean it's gonna be an easy road. That doesn't mean you're not gonna have the days where, I've had days where I'm like, what the heck did I do? I'm tired, I'm exhausted, something's not working out the way that I thought it would, or whatever. You're gonna have your days, but the key is to not stay there, not stay in that place, that you pick yourself up and you go ahead and do it again, or you try it this way, or you try it that way. And I think when you're talking economic development, it seems like, because I went back and forth, because I've got this whole speech where I talk about all the, I'm sure you've seen the bubbles of all the reasons economic development, doesn't work with the infrastructure and all that stuff. And those are important, don't get me wrong. And I almost did my whole spill on that. But then I decided, no, I decided those things are important and those things are real. And I can send you the chart that I have and all that stuff if you would like to see it, because those are big problems. But the biggest problem that I see, I think, is right here, right? If we have to get right inside of our own self to say, I want to do this no matter the obstacles. I want to help my neighbor no matter if they don't think the way that I think, whatever the case may be. If we was to take it and dial it back to that simple human level of just connecting with each other, with inspiring each other, with sharing not only the good times, the highlight reels, but also sharing when we fell on our face and how it felt and how it stunk and how it sucked in, but we did it anyway. Because that's the stuff that people need to hear. That was what I needed to hear, honestly, when I went through some bad times. And I can remember thinking, maybe this is not meant for me. Maybe I'm not meant to do this. Maybe I'm not good enough. Maybe, all the, things that go through our mind. And I wanted to see something, an example of somebody that didn't have the gloss over perfect Instagram reel, right? An example of somebody that had a messy, but still they did it anyway. I couldn't find it. It's not that it didn't exist, but I think sometimes, we want to show our good stuff. There's nothing wrong with that. It's like, oh, I did this. This is great. Look, my kids stood here clean for 5 seconds. Look at this pretty picture of us. But what we're not a lot of times seeing is what happened before that, where you're like gritting through your teeth, like, soil right now, for that picture that everybody's seeing. It's like, oh, it's a beautiful, right? Or, you're in the clean corner of your home, but you got like a pile of dishes over here and you're taking the picture, right? We all have it. And I'm not saying that your, story should be to show your messy parts, but I felt led and called to show my messy parts. It was like an internal pull for me to show just how messy I was. And I'm messy. And just how messy my life was, because I didn't want to be a stumbling block for some other woman or man out there that quit because they looked at my life and thought, well, she did this, that, and the other, but that's because she has it all together. People that are close to me can tell you I have it 0% together, and people that are, in my life, some have heard enough of my stuff to know that I have it enough together to do what I need to do. But just like everybody else, my life's a mess. I argue with my husband and I sometimes yell at my kids and have to cry and tell them I'm sorry. We all have those messy parts of our life, and we can still do things anyway. We all have things in our past that maybe we wish we hadn't done or wish we hadn't experienced, or things that have happened to us that wasn't fair. But that doesn't mean we can't do what we want to do anyway. And, if we start with that very core concept of realizing that we're all human, and we all have basic needs, and we all have our hopes and dreams, and we are in collaboration and not competition with each other. I think that is what will start to spur economic development. And I'm sure that's not the talk that you all thought you were getting. I went back and forth and argued with myself even this morning on which one to give. And I felt pulled and led to give it from this level. If you want to hear the other talk, economic development on all the portions, I think that's super important. I don't know how long I got, but I think that's super important. But I do think at a very core, basic level, be nice to yourself, be nice to everyone, support the person down the street stop in when they're having their open house, share their social media post, ask what you can do in your village and community. Don't think it's not your problem. If it's not your problem, whose problem is it? Figure out like what you can do collectively, because collectively we're a whole lot stronger than single. You know, me by myself, I've only got so much that I can do. Me and my team, we can do so much. And I think that right there is what will start to really spur that economic development. And I think that's the only thing that I've seen that the city has went on that we don't, is that they've had to work collectively. They don't have a choice. They've had to work collectively. So if we know that, that's the only thing. I worked both places. That's the only thing they've got. If we already know that that is their superpower, we can do that. We can work collectively. We can, you know, put our own biases on, you know, on the back burner, or the fact that our neighbor put out, you know, pumpkins 2 weeks before we thought they should, or, you know, whatever the case may be. You know, we can get over that and we can support them anyway, because that's what's going to drive, you know, the economic development in this area. And get involved in your chamber. You know, that it's funny how many people think that they join something just on name. They just write their name down. I'm like, I'm joined. And then somehow they think that that's what's going to change everything. But you get what you give. It's a give and take. And it's like that with any club, any membership, any chamber, any in marketing. I have had to have this conversation with my marketing clients. Marketing is not an ATM machine. You don't put X amount of dollars in and then just stand there like this and wait for it to come back. You know, it takes work. It takes, you know, commitment. It takes you pushing in just as much as you're expecting to get back. And like, you know, I think that those little things can make a huge difference in our own mindset, you know, our own expectations and our communities. I don't know if you want me to keep going or to.
We've got like 4 minutes.
4 minutes. Does anybody have any questions? I'm sure they're just kind of like, what in the world is wrong with this lady?
No one has typed any questions yet.
Do you all have any questions? Okay. Well, if I got 4 minutes, I will say this. Off my tangent on that kind of stuff. One of the things I know that has been so hard out here for me is figuring out, I had no idea when I started, I've never had a coffee shop before. That was everything for me. I make bougie coffee at home. I love coffee. I like doing the recipes and stuff, but I never actually opened a coffee shop. When I opened mine, you know, you have to go through and get the Department of Health. You have to get the fire marshal. You have to get the, all the things, right? I needed a occupancy change. I called Claremont County, who does the building inspections for Brown County, and I was told that they do not handle it for Russell or Hammersville anymore because there was no contract renewal. Don't even know on what side that was, just knew that I couldn't get a building inspection done. That's another thing that I think a lot of people don't realize that goes on out here is we're understaffed everywhere. I mean, that's like a nationwide thing, but out here we don't have a lot of the I guess a lot of the departments that are like bigger cities do. So we have to rely on other counties to do that. And if there are contract renewals or things that need to happen, a lot of the people that are in charge in these villages, they don't know what to do. There's no list of things that needs to happen. And I know Missy and I and Jim Patrick and I and Lisa and I have talked about, you know, creating these, you know, these cheat sheets, these booklets that not only for businesses that are coming in to know who they need to call, what they need to do, but also for, you know, the villages. I know the people that are in the village here, and I know the mayors next door here. You know, when they get put in these roles, they don't even have any idea a lot of times what needs to happen. They're not in politics. They're not in government. They're not in, you know, any of these roles that give them a list of things that needs to happen and when. So, you know, when you're thinking about what's missing from a lot of these little areas, it's little things like that. Like, who do you call, you know, when this happens? Or like for the mayor, what needs to be filed? How does it get filed? And when does it get filed? You know, all of these things, I think it would be easy if we could complete these easy to follow booklets to be able to kind of get over that. Because I know I wouldn't be open even now if I had known people in Columbus. I was able to call people that I knew just from my business that I knew in Columbus. I'm like, listen, I don't know what we need to do. I don't know who I need to pay to come out here, but I just need a building inspection. So it's little, that's another thing that can be done. That's super simple, but figure out, and maybe I'll tell you this, if you've heard or if you've experienced anybody that have had any hurdles in their business, like I was just saying, couldn't get a building inspection, let one of us know, because we're going to be compiling these lists, these checklists, and we really need you all to participate to let us know what struggles you've had. I can tell you all the ones I've had, but I don't know all that other people have experienced. So if you know that, and I'm being like told to cut off, so I'll shut up. But if you know any of those, let Missy, Lisa, myself know, and then I guess that's all. All right.
Thank you. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Maria. That was inspiring. Got a lot out of that. All right, we're just going to take a real quick, 2-minute break so you can get up and stretch. And then Missy Jemison from the Brown County Chamber is going to give you some information on their services. And then Paul Hall from Paul Hall and Associates Insurance is going to speak. So just a couple minutes. All right, okay, so next we have Missy Jemison from the Brown County Chamber of Commerce.
Hello, everybody. My name is Missy, and like Lisa said, I'm with the Brown County Chamber of Commerce, and I'm just going to take just a few quick minutes to let you know some of the advantages of why you should join the Chamber of Commerce. Again, like Maria said, it's not a magic. It's not a magic key. You just don't automatically join the Chamber of Commerce and all of a sudden everybody's beating down your door wanting to do business with you. It takes that give and take. And one of the best things that we have to offer at the Chamber of Commerce is all of these networking opportunities. We have meetings and events where business owners like you get to meet with other business owners in the county. And believe it or not, people like to do business with people that they know. And once you start to meet these other business owners, people become very loyal. They want to do business with other chamber members. I constantly have people calling me up and say, hey, do you have a chamber member that does plumbing or whatever? And I can say, yes, here, this is who we recommend, this is who our members are. And they will try to purposely find a chamber member to do business with before looking elsewhere. And a lot of times you'll meet somebody at these meetings or at these networking events where you might not need their services right there at that moment. But next thing you know, you're talking with your friend or your neighbor and they mention, hey, I need whatever, I need insurance. And then you can say, well, hey, I just met this person at the chamber meeting that does insurance. And it just kind of snowballs from there. And then the other part of what we have to offer is we do have a lot of money saving discounts that you get when you become a member of the chamber. For example, you can get discounts on health insurance. You can get discounts on your workers' comp. You can get discounts on your gas and electric bill and a few other things. And a lot of times it doesn't sound like a lot, but most of the time these cost saving benefits to you are more than your annual membership into the Chamber of Commerce. So if you just take advantage of one of the programs that we have to offer, it covers what your annual membership dues are. And they are based on the number of employees you have. So the most average people pay $150 to $200 a year for membership. The largest number of employees would pay up to $500. So really it is, like I said, a very cost affordable program. And then, like I said, you get money saving benefits and a lot of networking benefits out of it. So if you have any questions, if you want to join, reach out to me. I'll put my information to the chat window and I will come out and meet you and we'll go through all of the advantages and hopefully I can get you signed up to be a member of your chamber.
All right, thank you, Misty. All right, our next speaker is Paul Hall. Paul is the owner and principal agent of Paul Hall and Associates Insurance Agency and has operated the business for more than 30 years. He is also the president and registered tax preparer for Painless Tax Service and president and owner of Cartemps Rental Agency. Paul's been married to his wife Jill for 39 years and has 3 daughters.
Well, good morning. We're going to do a PowerPoint because of insurance and taxes is not exactly an exciting area. And some of it you need to refer back to, so it'll be available afterwards as well as we go through it. We're going to try to do it on bullet points because I just said insurance is not the most exciting part, but something we all have to have. And so you have your local agent and you should work with your local agent, whoever that is. And every 3 to 5 years, sit down with them and say, okay, what are my coverages? What are my weaknesses? So these are just some bullet points that you might want to say, some of them will be effective to you and some won't. And so as we go through it, the first one we'll talk about is the bullet point of hired and non-known auto. And you think, well, I don't have any employees. I don't need to have hard auto. That's very possible. If you have no employees, you don't need hard auto. But non-known auto, well, that's a different story. We're going to talk about Brother Bill. Brother Bill, you know, you're running a little business a cafe in Russellville, and you need a battery or a belt or something. And you call Brother Bill who lives in Cincinnati and says, on your way home tonight, would you swing by and pick up that for me? Yeah, I'd be glad to, sis. I'll do that for you. Brother Bill has an accident. So what happens? He was driving home from work, right? He would never sue his sister. But there's a problem with that. In the society we live in today, what happens in that accident? State patrolman or police officer takes a report. And if Brother Bill says, I was driving home from work, probably everything's good. But you know, Brother Bill's probably going to say, I was picking up a battery from my sister. Well, guess what? The insurance company is going to read that police report. Because every insurance company, no matter who you're insured with, they're trying to figure out a way to get out paying a claim. And the first thing they see is sister. Aha. So they come back to the cafe here, and the cafe doesn't have non-owned auto. So now Brother Bill is going to sue his sister. Well, obviously the brother won't, but the insurance company will. So non-owned auto covers the people that's not necessarily part of the business, but they're doing it. It could be your next door neighbor. It could be a family member. It could be a friend. And so make sure, whatever, if you have any business exposure whatsoever, that you have an endorsement for non-owned and hard auto. Bullet point 1. And there's a little cheat sheet there you can see. The next bullet point is co-insurance. As a business owner, you're a little different than a homeowner's. Homeowners, you have replacement costs, and your insurance agent's responsible to make sure it's insured correctly. Business, that's not the fact. You're responsible as a business owner to insure it correctly. And you're also responsible to insure it to 80%, at least. And so, yeah, you trust your insurance agent. That's a conversation you got to sit down with and say, you know, and I always use the example of tobacco barns in Brown County. Because tobacco barns, it costs $100,000 to build it back. Well, if you insure it as a typical building and you have a partial loss and you've put $50,000 on it because you know you're not going to build back that tobacco barn, well, you have the claim. Insurance adjuster comes out and says, well, you only insured half your building, 50,000 instead of 100. So we're only going to pay half the claim. And so if you had a $10,000 claim, you're going to get $5,000. So co-insurance is the responsibility of the business owner, not the insurance agent. And that's why I say every 3 to 5 years, you need to sit down with that insurance agent and say, okay, here's what I've got. Because rest assured, I guarantee you, Maria's got more in inventory today than she did 6 months ago. And she probably hadn't talked to her insurance agent. And so now who's responsible? We like to think we review our people annually every year, but we don't come out and talk to you and say, okay, what have you changed from the previous year? So co-insurance is one of those hidden things that might get you. The one you see there is basic, broad, and special. I just put that in there for future reference to basically give you an idea of what are my coverages. Look at your policy because you read it. So how do I understand this? Basic, broad is what you see on most insurance companies. And then on your homeowners, you'll usually see special. So know it from a business exposure. And there gives some examples of the co-insurance because when I shut up, you're going to say, what the heck do you say about co-insurance? So there are some examples there. Bullet point number 3, workers' compensation. We just talked about the workers' comp from the chamber. For new business owners, do you need workers' compensation? I have no employees. Do I need workers' comp? You absolutely do. Everyone needs workers' compensation. If you have anything in any way that's involved with business, Brother Bill, he's coming back into the story again. Brother Bill is your employee. Per the state of Ohio, Brother Bill is an employee. He has an accident, gets hurt, he comes over, helps in the cafe, slips on the ladder. He was just helping paint, nothing big deal. He wasn't getting paid, except maybe a cup of coffee. Guess what? You're going to go to health insurance. Health insurance, what do they ask you when you're in hospital? How'd this happen? It's a part of a business, da-da-da-da-da. Anthem's going to get the claim. They're going to say, aha, the cafe should be paying that. Now, Brother Bill wasn't getting paid, but you as a business owner are responsible. I even tell my little old ladies, I'll say, I'm going to be a little old man, I guess, but little old ladies, you probably should have workers' compensation if you have someone mow your yard, clean the gutters, anything like this is part of workers' compensation. Sue the state of Ohio. It's very simple. You don't have to go to the chamber for the simple ones. You just sign on the Ohio Bureau of Workers' Compensation. It's a minimum premium. That way, if anybody does anything for you, you got coverage. And you think, oh, well, that'd be covered under my homeowners. Well, again, it's not because you're giving that guy $20 to mow your yard. At that point, that is a contract. So workers' compensation. Now, for you guys with lots of employees, absolutely. You want to be part of a group. The Chamber of Commerce would be a great group to be a part of because it saves you a lot of premium. And it does many times save your dues amount. And it talks about employees paid or unemployed. And the next page talks about employer's liability. And for those of you that do have employees, do you need employer's liability? You think, oh, I'll have that on my insurance policy. No, you probably don't. If you haven't met with your agent in the last couple of years, you probably don't have it. Employer's liability, ironically, came about from Claremont County 20-some years ago when stopgap came into place, workers' comp, and employer's liability. Not to bake in insurance or a legal lawyer here, but just know that employees can actually sue you on and above workers' compensation. So you better make darn sure you have employer's liability, employee liability as part of your package. Most people do not. That is definitely a question today. If you're running a business, write it down to talk to your insurance agent and say, hey, do I have employee liability? Make sure in this day and age you do. Independent contractors. Most of you out there today say, I use independent contractors, I don't do any of this. Well, per the IRS, there's not very many independent contractors. Most people are employees. What it comes down to basically, if you tell that person where to be, when to do it, and how to do it, they're an employee. I don't care if you sign a contract to say, this is going to be paid $1,000. That is not an independent contractor. That is an employee. Per the IRS, very few people can be classified as an independent contractor. If you truly believe they're an independent contractor, you better make sure you read this information or go to the IRS website and you think, what's it matter? I'll tell you what matters. The IRS, they have a heart. They really do. Most IRS auditors will work with you. Most of them are compassionate with you, especially small business owners. They really will work and try to bend to protect you and help you. The one that doesn't, well, it's called Social Security. When you have an independent contractor, you don't pay Social Security tax. And they'll take your firstborn in your house and never blink an eye. They have no sympathy whatsoever, and they're looking for you. So if you're paying somebody under a 1099, you better be thinking real hard about stopping it immediately, because the Social Security people, they're looking for you, and they're looking for you regularly. The IRS, again, they don't really care. Social Security, they do care. They want their 15%. So better not cheat on that one. Talks about employer's liability there. And the next bullet is ATV. As I said, these are just things you talk to your insurance agent about. You own an ATV. Do you need an insurance policy? Nah, I don't need an insurance policy. If I lose it, I lose it. There's a little thing called the state of Ohio law. State of Ohio says you must have an insurance policy on ATV if it ever leaves your property. They'll never leave my property. What if you have property on both sides of the road? Or grandma's on this side and you're on this side. You cross the road. Guess what? You just left your property and you're on public property. If an accident happens, guy slams on his brakes because he saw you and runs into the ditch, who's responsible for the accident? The ATV. You go to your insurance company under your homeowners. I'm sorry, we have no coverage for that. ATVs are insured separately. Just remember that. Now, UTVs, that is not the case. So if you got a nice little gator, yeah, you're good. Just the way the law was written. If it's an ATV, it's classified as an ATV, you need an insurance policy. And all kinds of companies will write it. Foremost American Mod writes a lot of it. They're not expensive. It's $100 and some bucks a year. Just be aware, everybody just assumes it's covered by your farm policy or your home policy. It is not. Next bullet, pollution. Now let's talk about Maria and her worms. All of her thing, pollution there or not. But, you think about, well, why would I ever have pollution? Painters, beauticians, farmers, a lot of different businesses have exposure to pollution. And they think, well, if anything happens, it's covered under my insurance. No, it is not. Again, pollution is specifically excluded if you have anything that the federal or state government or county government can come in to say, you polluted a stream or you polluted this, you're responsible for it. Most of it doesn't affect. All I'm telling you is make sure you have that conversation with your insurance agent. Do I need pollution liability? Most people really do if they're in any kind of occupation, contractors, building a home. Yeah, there's a lot of stuff there. So it's, again, not a huge amount. Umbrella? Well, yeah, we all need an umbrella. Why do I need an umbrella? Well, your ATV, you buy a nice policy, it's $500,000 coverage. In that car accident I was talking about, somebody got killed. So you did your part. You did your ATV policy for $500,000. Now, a death, probably $500,000 is not enough. You buy $1 million coverage or a $2 million umbrella. Everybody says, oh my gosh, it's going to cost a fortune. Most umbrellas for most small business and most homeowners, you're talking a few $100s. It's probably one of those loopholes we just forget to close. It's a conversation to have with your insurance agent. Make sure you look at an umbrella for your business and your personal exposure as well. And the next one we talk about is what type of entity do I need? And there's a full page here of, I think, 4 different pages on talking about what entity I should use. If you're starting out, the simplest thing from a tax standpoint is what's called a single member LLC. talk to your lawyer. If you don't have a lawyer, you're not going to pay a lawyer. Well, you can go online and do legal Zoom and actually file with the Secretary of State and file it correctly. But a single member LLC, the reason that's important is you don't have to file business tax returns. You file it under your Schedule C of your personal tax return. So it's something simple until maybe it will do everything you need to do. It is the simplest form, but you do need to do something. The sole proprietorship sets yourself up to lose your house. And that's what we got to talk about. I mean, I can work with you in insurance and try to cover everything humanly possible and sell you everything under the sun. We might still miss something. Or we might have a fatality that costs more than we got insurance for. So make sure you set up a separate entity so it stops your liability at your place, at your business. And a single member LLC will do that. Lots of good lawyers will do it for you, probably for $300 to $400. You know, and I'll plug, you know, we have Tyler Hotel in Mount Orby's brand new. Jim Shorter at Sardinia is brand new. Maria, you were talking about helping the local people. There's 2 business owners that are just getting started that absolutely could use your help. And that's not to put the other lawyers down. They got more business than they probably do anyway. And these guys are for $300 or $400. Then when you go in and say this, so it's $500. It's like, okay, well, I'm not the lawyer, but I think it's $300 to $400 to do everything. We're going to move all the way up to red flags for the IRS. Okay, so you're sitting here thinking, oh my gosh, just give me something here and move on off of insurance. Let's talk about taxes. What are the things that tax preparers look for? And if you're using a CPA, great. I would tell you to use a tax preparer. Because tax preparers, the reason we started Painless Tax Services, we wanted to be different. We wanted to be someone that looked for your issues and tried to deal with you directly. CPAs are black and white. Our wife's a county auditor. Rest assured, we have our discussions. She's black and white, and I'm as gray gets. That's our gray hair too, but I love the gray area. I love to beat the IRS at their own games. And so I like to play in that gray area. But a CPA is a rule is a black and white person. This is right, this is wrong. Well, world is not a right and wrong. There's a big area in the middle. And you need to play in that middle. We don't want to give the IRS any more money than we absolutely have to give. And so that's what I tell you. You know, Mary, who's in this building, will sit down with you and say, hey, here's some things to think about. Not telling you how to cheat, that's not our job. But we will tell you what to look for. And sometimes, maybe the CPA doesn't. I'm anti-CPA, I guess. But they don't always look for the gray area. But these are things you need to think about. If you take anything away today, take some of these bullets, and they're for personal as well as business. The first one that the IRS looks for, and what you have to remember is the IRS is not looking at your return from personal. The computer is. And so it's our responsibility as your tax preparer to know what that computer is looking for. And we study a lot of hours and a lot of continuing ed to make sure we know what the IRS is looking for. Here's some bullets that Kippinger put out, and they're the biggest in the business. They really know what the IRS is looking for. It changes from year to year, but most of them stay pretty consistent. The first one is failure to reporting all income. I don't care if you're a Republican or a Democrat, things are going to change in the next 6 months in the taxes. The one thing you better be scared of is Biden's current proposal to know your bank account. Because if they get the authority to know everything in your banking account, look out. But let me explain something the IRS already does. The IRS can audit you at any given moment, and they can pull every bank account you have and know every dollar you put in it. So don't think you're going to outsmart the IRS. It's already there. But they have to have costs. Biden's administration wants to do away with the word costs. They want to do it carte blanche. All I'm saying is absolutely make sure you report every dollar you receive. Now, the little old man that mows your grass and you give him $20, yeah, maybe that don't go to the bank. If it's a check, it better. The IRS will monitor every dollar you bring. Make sure you never underreport money. All you got to do is go back, if you're as old as me, is Pete Rose. Pete Rose do anything wrong? I don't know. What did he get caught on? He didn't report income from signing signatures. That's why he went to jail. Had nothing to do with anything else. If you look at most people that get in trouble with the IRS, it's because they didn't report income. The next one is large charitable contributions. Again, we have to remember a computer is doing this, not a human, a computer. It looks for large charitable contributions. I believe as a business owner, you need to give 10% back to your community. You know, just put it in your operating budget that 10% of your net income is going back to your community. That is not norm. So you better make darn sure you're legit when you do it. And if you happen to give $5,000 to Eastern schools, well, you better make darn sure you got that documented because the IRS is going to come knocking. Now, don't be scared of the IRS. If you do that, you're going to get a letter from the IRS and say, would you please document this $5,000 donation? It's a letter generated by a computer. It's usually a simple letter back from your tax preparer saying, hey, yep, here's a copy of the receipt from Eastern Schools. You did give $5,000. And that's the end of it. But be aware that that will trigger an audit. Now, not a full audit, just a contribution audit. The next one is rental losses. Rental losses. I have more arguments in my office about rental losses than any other thing. Everybody likes to claim. Well, the IRS has basically said, if you have rental property, does it mean you can have a rental loss? First of all, you have to be actively involved in renting the property. We could go into the details of whether you are or you aren't. The IRS says you better be the one changing the toll. That's what it comes down to. You can't just do it from carte blanche high up here and say, I'm renting that property. Rental losses, the IRS is they're scheduling to watch Schedule E. So be aware of that. It's probably a loss I would be very cautious about taking. As you're working on your tax return preparer, that's one the IRS is flagged to say, here, we're watching. And the next one, absolutely, hobby as a loss. I'll tell my age, but the easiest way I can compare it is the good old Avon lady. I guess it could be an Avon man, but Avon, you know, you went out and you sold to your neighbors and your family and your friends. And there's lots of other things out there. I see it on Facebook all the time. They're selling these clothes or this makeup or whatever. And you deduct it, and you deduct your expenses. Well, the IRS is monitoring those and saying, folks, that's not a business, that's a hobby. So you can make sure it is a business. You better not be deducting your losses because the IRS is monitoring Schedule Cs and particularly ones that have losses on that type of business. It could be any type of business, but if truly you're following a Schedule C, you better be able to justify that it is a for-profit business, that your intent is to make profit. And talking about that, your CPA will tell you you need to make money 2L5, 3L5. That's not the law. The law is very pointed. It says intent to profit. It doesn't say 2L5, 3L5. That's all stuff we've made up in the business world. You can lose money 5 years in a row as long as you have intent to make profit. But rest assured, if you lose money 5 years in a row, and that's the difference between black and white and gray, you better have a reason why you lost business 5 years in a row. But if you're up and growing, that is something to be aware of. Travel expense. Remember, computers doing this. Yeah, with COVID, we haven't traveled near as much, but the IRS is monitoring travel. Don't have a bunch of stuff on your travel line. You know, so be cautious of what you're putting on that travel line because the computers are watching it and they're watching, and it's all in ratios. And so they know your income and they look at your ratio of travel and they know it should be 4% or 5%. And if it's 11%, it automatically kicks an audit. So just be cautious of your travel. Another one we tend to forget is you won $500 at the casino. Remember, the IRS knows where money's at. They definitely know where casino money's at. If you won $500, you better darn well be putting it on your tax return. They're watching it again. For a few years they did it. They're now watching casino gambling winnings or your racetrack the same way. The next one is, and this one is another one we argue about, 100% of business use in your vehicle. Oh, we like to take that vehicle business expense. Yeah, I only use it for business, so I'm taking 100%. Well, unless it's a 2-ton truck and you're hauling gravel and you never do anything else in it, you better not be taking 100%. You think, well, that truck can never do anything, because I'll tell you what the auditor's going to ask you. Did you ever take your kids to school in that truck? Did you ever stop and buy a gallon of milk in that truck on the way home from delivering the gravel? And if you can honestly say no, okay. But be aware the IRS is saying, most of the time, you probably did something that wasn't 100% business use. And so that's what I tell people, don't take 100%. Don't even let the computer see 100%. Take 80, take 85%. Because invariably, you're going to stop at the dollar store on the way home. And so that way, when the IRS auditor comes for something else, he looks at the 85% and says, this person's been pretty fair. And that's the thing with taxes, is try to always be fair. If the IRS auditor looks at it, you remember I just said, most of the time, they're pretty good girls, pretty good gals. If you take 85%, he's not, they're being legit. But if you take 97, 98, 99, he's going to start thinking, okay, if they're pushing the line there, they're probably pushing it somewhere else. Early retirement payout. Life gives us lemons at times, and we need money. And so we go to our retirement funds or IRA funds and we borrow money. It's a trigger of audit from the IRS. Doesn't mean there's anything wrong with it. Just be aware when you do it, it gives them another red flag. And our job as the tax return preparer is to look at your red flags and make you aware that even though we did this, we need to be prepared to address it. Now, again, there's probably a 3 or 4% chance to follow up on it, but it is something they're watching. What did you do with the money? And so they're going to see where they're follow the flow of the money. Maybe you gave it to your grandma. Maybe you had a kid that was sick, whatever. Maybe you built a bank building, bought a bank building in Russellville. I don't know what else, but they want to know where the money went. Even though it was your money, doesn't matter. Remember, the IRS follows the money. Home office deduction. Well, that's another one that everybody wants to do, home office deduction. If you have a facility that you can have an office in, you best not be taking home office deduction. They absolutely will tear you apart on that one. You can't have an office in home and an office here. I'll pick on Maria. She probably shouldn't be taking, I know Jeff does our taxes. I don't know if he's taking home office, but you probably shouldn't be taking him because she can declare this as an office. They don't like double dipping. The IRS really doesn't like people that try to double dip. And home office is one they know most people double dip on. Because they say, well, we can take some internet at home, we can take some electric at home, we can take, And you usually use a bedroom to begin with, and they probably got a kid sleeping in the bedroom. And so it's just home office deduction, probably one, just stay away from. For the few $100s you save, it probably isn't worth the flag. And the last one, this is a problem for everybody. If you make over 200,000, your odds of being audited are a lot better. So for those of you who make over 200,000, just be prepared. Little note at the bottom there, standard mileage for 2021 is going from 57.5 to 56 cents. Just stuck it in there. It'll probably go up for 2022, but we'll wait, see what they do. The next page, and I'll address the people with employees. Are you waiting for a refund? If you're seeing it on screen, you don't have to worry about it. What you're looking for, a business deduction. 21, 22. And I don't know whether to give credit to Trump or Biden on this one, but somebody did a good thing here. They're basically trying to take care of employees. Whatever you're doing for employees, you can deduct. Whatever you're doing for employees, you can deduct 100%. Here's a little chart that breaks it out. Used to be, if I took an employee to lunch, well, technically I was supposed to tax it. Should have been on his W-2. If you did it once or whatever, nobody worried about it. But the law was very specific. I could not buy employees lunches. It's called the discrimination lawsuits and everything else. Well, they've changed all that. Now I can take you to Alaska. If I want to take you golfing, I can deduct it. And I can take your spouse. So employee and their spouse, I can basically do anything I want to. Take them on trips. And you'll even notice in here, the Chamber of Commerce is listed. Any Chamber of Commerce function, meals, motels, whatever, 100% deductible. That's all been changed. And I think it comes back to the whole employee situation that we're in now, trying to help hold employees. The IRS, and I've told you several times, the IRS really does have it on the heart. And I really believe this is where they come down and said, okay, we're going to try to help the business owners the best we can by giving them something for their employees. And so be aware of that. Now, prospects, that's one that everybody cheats on. If you're a business owner, you've probably cheated on this one. You take a prospect to the Cincinnati Reds game. Can you deduct him? Absolutely not. Now, you can be creative and say it was marketing and da, 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 da. But the IRS says you can't buy that Reds ticket. I can take my employee and take their spouse, but I can't take a prospect. So be aware that still the laws are still there for business and marketing. You can't deduct everything. The next page is capital gains. For those of you who are thinking about selling something, it is important to know that capital gains will probably be changing. Capital gains for 2021, as of this moment, have not really changed exactly as 2020. 0, 15, and 20% max. I'm telling you that will change dramatically within the next 6 months. I don't believe that the Republicans will hold totally tight on it. I think they'll give in. And eventually, my guess, it'll end up 28 to 29%. And so instead of paying 39%, which is what the Democrats want currently, it'll probably end up in the 27 to 29%. Whatever, it's going up. So be aware that capital gains is going to go up. So what does that mean to you? Very simply, 100%, you sell it, make $100,000. Don't forget you're going to owe Uncle Sam 25 to 30,000 bucks. Don't go spend it. And then realize, oh, my taxes owe 25 grand. Long-term capital gains is there and they're not going anywhere. Talking about, look, just briefly about what is coming. If you read the House bill that came out 2 weeks ago now, taxable income will be higher in 2022. So as you end your year as a business owner, typically I'd tell you to try to hide as much income, so to speak, and then advance your expenses. It's probably the opposite for 2021. Talk to your tax preparer, but probably in 2021, you want to claim all the income you possibly can and and shoot down the road at all your expenses. So what's that mean? You don't pay your electric bill. You don't pay extra bills in December. In fact, you push them to January because you're going to need the expenses in 2022. Just the opposite of what we've always told you. The reason being is I'm very comfortable that Congress will come out with a new tax bill and tax rates will go up. And so why not pay the 2021 taxes and be done with it? Again, talk to your tax preparer. For that, I'm done. Are we on time? I didn't
We're
look.
good. Yeah, we have about
Questions?
9 minutes.
Okay.
I have a question.
Yes.
The UTV,
Okay.
is that covered under your farm policy?
Yes.
Okay, so you don't have to have that separate, it's just under the farm
Yep.
policy.
Most, and a lot of gators and that kind of, things there, you want to list them under your farm, it's like a tractor, but they're listed. The state of Ohio looks at them as a tractor.
Okay.
And so that way you can just list them and they're covered under the farm policy. But for some reason ATVs they pick on. And I think I know why, if you looked at some razors and whatever, and it's scary what some of these people are paying for some of these ATVs now. I mean, it's more than a car. So
Pricey.
yeah, so the insurance companies are saying, wait a minute, yeah. And some of the things you do on them probably are part of the reason too, but yeah, it is automatically covered. Any other questions?
Someone just wanted to make sure that they will be able to receive the PowerPoints from today's presentation. We will send them out after the event. And then that was the only question.
Okay, sounds good. We'll move on then.
All right, thank you.
Mhm.
So smarter now. Yeah.
I'm glad you're my tax rep since I can call you.
There you go.
Because I do have a few questions.
That was a lot of good information. Thank you, Paul. All right, let's just take a quick 2-minute break. We're going to get Diane Cohorn from First State Bank up via Zoom. And then we will have Deanne Strickland right after her. All right, so next we're going to hear from Diane Cohorn at First State Bank, and she is via Zoom. I think we're ready for you, Diane.
I think she's unmute.
Can you unmute Diane?
We can see her, but we can't hear her.
We can see you, but we cannot hear you.
Are you on Zoom? You can click to request to unmute. Maybe that'll pop up something on her screen. Am I imagining I'm hearing somebody like from far away? Okay. Is that okay?
No, we still can't hear you.
I wonder if it has to do with her computer speakers.
She can dial in from her phone and put the computer on mute and then use the audio portion from her phone.
Okay, we're having just a little technical difficulty, maybe just a minute.
We want to go on and then try her again.
So Diane's having a little trouble connecting to the audio, so we'll go on and we'll have Deanne, her presentation next. So Deanne Strickland lives near West Union, Ohio, and is a John Maxwell certified leadership trainer, speaker, and coach. Dee's master's degree in educational administration is from the University of Dayton. Deanne has served as a classroom teacher and school administrator for several school districts, as well as a trainer for the Resilient Building Leadership Company located in San Diego, California. Deanne has a passion for working with adults and children. One of her passions is supporting increased communication and leadership skills. Her primary goal in life is to add value to everyone she encounters. So Deanne, I'll turn it over to you. Just in case.
Need just a second here to get organized. Let's see, this doesn't have a thing to hold it. Does it? Well, hello, everyone. It's kind of weird because you can see me, I can't see you, but I'm so excited to be here, and I've already learned a lot just listening to these speakers who have gone prior to me. And it's interesting because some of the things that I will talk about kind of correlates with some of the things that they have said. So I always think that that's pretty exciting. So I so admire their ability to get up and speak and not use notes, but I do have notes. I have a lot of content, and maybe it comes from being an educator, but you know, it's like, it makes me feel really good to have it in front of me. So, you know, please understand that. So I'm very excited to be with you. And the first thing I want to say is the path to building or leading a business is not a straight line. And wow, we saw that today. It can be very messy. So we're going to talk about some leadership concepts, my story, as well as some other stories. I'm going to provide some resources and hopefully some practical ideas for a new business or possibly another project. You may already have an established business or job, but you may wish to add another business or transition to a new business. Maybe this session will bring some clarity to what you're thinking. So I want to combine some knowledge and inspiration because we need both. My mentality is that there is enough good for everyone. And that kind of correlates with what Maria said. We need to support one another as we try to create better communities. So, wow, we didn't even talk about this ahead of time. So it's pretty cool when, you know, we reinforce each other. So this morning, as you're sitting there out in, you know, Zoom world, I'd like you to just imagine that you and I are sitting across from the table from each other, and we're having a conversation, because when you put two people together, that's when you get a lot of energy and synergy. So maybe you're sitting there with your cup of coffee or your drink. You know, I've got my water here because I'll probably need it. So our time this morning will go fast. So I'm going to jump right in. I hope you have a pen and a notebook. So already it's been said that I'm a career educator, but then I branched out into the leadership training and consulting. I began thinking about building a business after I was able to retire at a very young age of 51. And I knew that I still had a lot to do and I had a lot of passion. So I combined my skill set as a teacher and a school administrator with a new set of skills in leadership. And I decided to go through training with John Maxwell. If you're not familiar with him, he is a leadership expert. He's written at least 60 books. And a fun fact is he actually grew up in Winchester, Ohio, from the time he was a young child up until school age. So, you know, he's world famous, but everyone has to come from somewhere. So, you know, I think that's a pretty exciting thing. So back to my story. So, you know, I started out with the DBA doing business and as Mr. Hall said, that was not a good idea. And I did that a couple of years because I guess I just didn't really know any better. But then I decided that I wanted to formalize my business. So I did form an LLC. And, you know, that was an exciting time for me. So when I started, and I went to the John Maxwell convention, my first certification event, it was in Orlando. And I met so many amazing people because I'm kind of a rural country girl, and I've lived in this small area of Southern Ohio my entire life. And I felt like I needed to kind of push out and meet people from other parts of the world. And I did so. There are 80 countries involved in the John Maxwell team. And when I went to the training, there were about 2,000 people there. And so I got to meet people from all over the world. Some of these people have become lifelong friends. One of my friends is Guillermo Flores. He's an immigration attorney in Jupiter, Florida. He has had such an interesting talk about careers. He started with Coast Guard, got a degree in natural resources, became a policeman, was a taxidermist, and is now an attorney. And here's a fun career addition that he has done. He recently trained a wire-hair griffin, which I never heard of, but it's a fancy dog. And his name is Teddy, after Theodore Roosevelt. And he's now competing in very high dollar hunting competitions. So if he does well, G and his fiance will be able to add a new stream of dollars to their income. What a fun business pursuit tied to loving a dog. So another guy that I met, and you know, the reason I'm telling you this is because, you know, I could have just stayed in Adams County and just, you know, done the things that I would have normally done, but I've pushed myself out there because I felt like I needed to. So because of that, I have had some opportunities. So at this convention, the very last day, there was no dinner provided, but I went to a restaurant and I was in line with a couple of guys and they're like, hey, there's not much room. Why don't you sit with us? So we had this really good conversation. And Scott Biscotti, a graduate of the Citadel, invited me after talking to him for a few months of, you know, what I had to offer, invited me to join his team to provide leadership training at the Embry-Riddle Aeronautical University in Prescott, Arizona. I had never even been to Arizona. And it was for the Embry-Riddle's leadership team. I mean, wow, what an honor. And, you know, had I not had the courage to start my business, I would have never had that opportunity to meet people and to see places that I had never seen before. So one of the most valuable things I learned in my training was to have confidence that I had something to offer, and Maria talked a little bit about, sometimes we try to present our best face. And I have to tell you, my life hasn't been perfect either. I grew up, very, very rural, very blue collar family life. And, no one had gone to college. My older brother did go, and that kind of gave me the idea of, well, maybe I can go to college. But I'll tell you, when I graduated from high school, there was no discussion of me going to college. I didn't really know what I was going to do, but I just luckily ran into a friend who said, hey, I'm going to Southern State, which is a local college. And my parents said, well, yeah, that's okay. And they gave me enough money for 2 years that I was good money. So I stretched it into enough to pay my entire tuition for my bachelor's degree. That was, I don't even know how that happened, but it was a miracle, because had that not happened, I don't know what I would be doing. So sometimes we have to push out and try new things. So let's talk about some things to support a business that produces value and can make a business ultimately self-sustaining. So I'm going to ask some questions, and maybe that's because I'm a teacher. But the first question I want you to ask yourself right now is, do I have a strategy to make my business a reality, or is it still just in dream stage? That's not there's no right or wrong. It's just, ask yourself about that. So having a success mindset is imperative to creating a business. It's very important, as someone said earlier, that we have a passion for our service or our product. I love this quote: love what you do and do what you love. And I've often thought that, and I've heard this before, if you love your job, you're not going to work a day in your life. And I'm so blessed. I'm in a position right now working part-time for an educational service center doing instructional coaching. And I just literally feel like I should pay them, because it's just such an amazing career. So, I love to be with children. I love to be with other adults and make a difference. So, I feel really blessed in that way. So another thing is self-belief. And that's something that I've learned over time. I didn't have the confidence when I started that I have now. The capable leader has a tremendous belief in themselves and has confidence gained from years of experience. They're aware of their strengths and weaknesses. It's very important that we understand with every strength, oftentimes comes a weakness, and we need to be aware of that. So an entrepreneurial leader should be very self-assured. Does that describe you? What would you need to do to become more confident? None of us are confident all the time, but we do have to learn to believe in ourselves, and it's something that we can ascribe to be. So Napoleon Bonaparte said, the word impossible is not in my dictionary. What a fascinating man, who was the ultimate entrepreneur and creator of new ideas and concepts. Do a little bit of research about his accomplishments. They were diverse and much more than military strategy. As I've gone through my presentation, I have to tell you, I read a lot of books, I took a lot of notes, and I've gone through my presentation multiple times, and every time I change it or add things. And even last night, I was doing some research on Napoleon Bonaparte, and I'm like, oh my gosh, we can learn so much from reading autobiographies and biographies of people like him who, you think about all the things that he did, just really amazing. So our vision, do you know and believe in your vision? A successful entrepreneur needs to have a clear vision and needs to be able to explain it to others. They communicate their vision and work to make it a reality. This makes me think of the show Shark Tank, which is basically for entrepreneurs. Along with a great idea, the ability of an entrepreneur to explain what they plan on doing, which, obviously everyone in this room has done a good job of that, has a lot to do with their ultimate success. I loved Maria, and I'll refer to her again. I loved when she talked about having a vision of taking this really cool, very substantial, strong looking building with the vault and just so many really cool things. And she had a vision that she wanted to put this coffee shop in. And man, I just admire that so much. And she's a perfect example of being resourceful. and resilient, which I think both are very important. So my next question is, do you have a goal? We need to be able to write our goals down. And there is research that says once we write a goal down, we're something like 50% more likely to accomplish that. And I have found that myself. So another thing we look at when we're talking about setting goals, I don't know if you've heard of the term SMART goals or not. If you haven't, jot that down and look that up, because you may not have time to write all this down right now. But a SMART goal is an acronym for specific. So whatever goal we're doing needs to be very specific, measurable. We need to know how we're going to measure it. We can't just say, I'm going to start running. We need to be able to say, I'm going to start running 2 miles a day, 3 times a week. So it's very specific, also measurable. It needs to be achievable. If I've never ran before and I say, well, I'm going to start running 20 miles a day, that's probably not going to happen. It needs to be realistic and timely. So this can seem a little philosophical, but it's very helpful when we can get these things down on paper. So the next thing, are you ready to get organized and lay out a plan? I'm pretty big on being simple. I love this philosophy of accomplishing whatever I need to do in the most simple way possible. And my organizational system is have a good calendar. And I do use an online calendar, but I also like a hard copy calendar and have a list. I mean, like I am really big. If I put it on a list, it's as good as done. It's very, very rare that I don't complete something that's on a list. So that's just a very simple thing for me. So when you're starting to think about your business, and this is what I did 2 years ago when I was getting started, I just literally had paper and I would write down everything I could think of. And then I would kind of take that mess and reorganize it and put it into basically action steps. So my business is Learn and Lead One Stop, and you can email me at learnandleadonestop.com or at yahoo.com, or my website is learnandleadonestop.com. So let's talk about technology a minute. You know, that's for some of you that may be like, wow, really easy. For others of you, it might be more challenging. So in schools, we refer to young people as digital natives, and those who didn't grow up with a screen in their hand are called digital immigrants. I think that's pretty fascinating. Think about that, natives, immigrants. So Lisa, our organizer, and I had this conversation a few days ago. We agreed that we manage technology, but sometimes it feels kind of clunky and a little awkward, and we're not always super intuitive. The solutions are to push out and learn new things. I had my twin 4-year-old granddaughters at my house this weekend, and you know, it was amazing. You know, they're not reading, but they knew exactly what to do, how to navigate their device. At one point, my granddaughter Taya said, Grandma, look at this. This is where adults have to give permission for, you know, buying a new program. And I'm like, oh my gosh, 4-year-old, she already knows that and, you know, knew enough to tell me that that's what it was. So on to some of the other things I did. And I appreciate Paul's discussion this morning about taxes. And he is my insurance agent. So I have some things I want to ask him after our talk today. It was just fantastic. So I reached out to my attorney for tax information, and she was very helpful, and she does do my taxes, and I'm very pleased with that. I purchased a book to help me write a good proposal, because pretty early on, I was asked to write a fairly complex proposal, and I knew that it would save me a lot of time if I either talked to someone or purchased a book that would talk me through that. And that's exactly what I did. And, you know, it's like we have to consider, you know, we may have the ability to do a task, but maybe we don't want to invest that much time. So for instance, when I did my website, I paid someone to do it, and he monitors it and all as well. I could have learned to do that, and maybe at some point I'll take one of the classes and I will learn to do that, but we have to kind of be judicious about that. It's kind of like a return on investment. Do I really have time to do that right now? Or maybe I'll go ahead and have someone else do it, and I'll put my time, you know, someplace else. So when I decided to apply for my LLC, I spent a lot of time on the phone with Lisa, who is our moderator today, and so graceful and gracious and helpful. It was just such a blessing. So she helped me apply, and I did go directly to the state. I didn't, pay an intermediary, and it seemed to work out okay. So when I started, of course, I started with the DBA, doing business as, which I said, I know now that was probably not a great idea, but I had to learn. I learned along the way. Some of you may be interested in forming a C or an S corporation. And if these are all new to you, then you probably need to do some research. And I will tell you, if you want to jot these down, a few places that you can look are the Ohio Secretary of State, which is www.ohiosos.gov, irs.gov, and your state small business website. There, I found out when I went to this training, which was in real time 2 years ago, there are so many more resources out there than I ever dreamed. Lots and lots in the area of small business. And there's a lot for women or minorities as well. And I qualify as a minority because I'm a female Appalachian. Now, I'm not accessing that right now, but there may be a point in time, that I will. And it feels good to know that there are people out there who want you to be successful. I mentioned buying the book earlier on writing a proposal. I use Amazon and eBay a lot. You can buy almost any book you want used, and sometimes you can, even with postage, it'll be like $3.99. I mean, that's just amazing. You can go to the library. There's so much available now on internet, on search engines. You just have to learn to put in the search engine, what's really going to bounce it back. Another thing I wanted to mention is relationships. I am on LinkedIn. I don't know how many of you in business are on LinkedIn, but I tell you what, that has been the most amazing thing. I have connected, I looked a couple of days ago, I'm connected to about 1,400 people. And from that, I have been receiving contracts. I will post things and people will see what I post and they're like, they'll send me a private message and we'll have conversation. I'm really excited. I'm getting ready to go in November to a school near Dayton, and I'm going to be doing a team building leadership activity with the coaching staff of a high school and the high school varsity basketball team. And it's called the Leadership Experience. And I've done this before. I've done it with, a lot of different groups, and as few as 12 and as many as 300. And, it's funny because today is one of the first times, other than individual coaching, I've been able to do something locally. I've been to Prescott, Arizona. I've done a lot in Columbus. I've been all over the place. So it's exciting. Sometimes, what is it they say? It's hard to be an expert in your hometown. There may be some truth to that, but thank you, Lisa, for giving me the chance and the opportunity. So I want to tell you about another LinkedIn opportunity. And I'm not telling you this because I'm trying to make myself sound like I'm all that, because I'm not. I'm really pretty humble. But on LinkedIn, I was contacted by the president of a company called Resilience Building Leadership. Dr. Gene Coughlin is a retired career infantry senior leader Marine. That's a mouthful. Long story short, he had read about my work with youth and leadership, because I do a lot with youth as well. And so he told me he asked me questions, and I asked him about his business. So the conversation led to him asking me if I would be interested in working for them. And I'm like, wow, that'd be pretty amazing for me to be in rural Adams County, Ohio, working for someone in California. So I had 3 interviews. They offered to train me to go through their training. And then it still blows my mind. I feel like I'm talking about someone else. I became a trainer for senior leaders in industry in the areas of resilience building leadership. And it's really powerful stuff. So I trained corporation people from Starbucks, a lot of military. And, that's just been such a blessing. So for instance, one of the gentlemen that I just trained this summer, his name is Clay Huey, and he's a commander over the Atlantic submarine operation. And, I'm like, when this all started, I'm like, how can I help these guys who are, global leaders? But the deal is we had information, and they would read it, and then I would facilitate the information. And the most amazing things happen. When we would have 7 weeks of an hour session each, and most of the time we went 2 hours. I only got paid for an hour, but 9 times out of 10, we went 2 hours and they wanted to. And the synergy that came from our conversation, and what I tried to do is I took the resilience building material and tried to apply it to whatever they were doing. And I mean, it was just like, I was just on some kind of a high by the time, you know, we would hang up. And we were on actually Microsoft Teams, so it was a video component. So I call that 2-dimensional. You know, when you're on the phone with someone, it's 1-dimensional. When you are on a video, it's 2-dimensional. And of course, in person, it's 3-dimensional. So another young man, he is kind of young, I guess, but his name is Daniel Logan. He was chief of staff in the Marines, served all over the world. He's a graduate of the Citadel. Even though our worlds have been very different, we share the common language of leadership. And he lives in Texas and this is so exciting because he's been looking for a really good job for about a year. He just accepted a global training position with Amazon. So, you know, I was so tickled because as soon as he found out, he sent me a message and told me that he had just gotten this new job. So even though it was just 7 weeks and it was an hour a week, we developed a bond and a connection. And he knew that I cared about him more than just, you know, a job. And I think that that's so important that, you know, no matter what our business is, that people know that it's not about just the job or making money. And again, Maria, I keep on referring back to some things you said, but it's about people knowing that we care and adding value to their lives. So this is kind of a fun story. I worked with a lot of Navy officers for some reason, and most of them were from the South. But I learned a lot too, and we can learn from others. It's not always just about us sharing our information. It's, you know, it goes both ways. He said, do you know about the origin of the phrase, all the bells and whistles? Well, you know, I didn't. So he went on to explain that when sailors are in a ceremony receiving a new rank, whistles are blown traditionally and bells are rang to celebrate the occasion. And if I remember right, he said that the cook on the ship takes care of making sure that the bells are shined. I'm like, who knew? I mean, there is so much out there in this world that we don't know, or at least I don't know. So back to the LinkedIn, I certainly recommend that you develop a LinkedIn profile, start connecting with individuals who have the capacity to contribute to your success and business building. Another local man, some of you may know him, Rick Fulton. He was my neighbor when we grew up together. He's worked all over the world in HR positions. He's recently written 2 books about his experiences in other countries. You know, he and I both, we kind of laugh. We're like, you know, we grew up about 4 houses apart, and we've both done some kind of unusual things for people in our area. But he is someone I just look to and admire, because he pushed out of his comfort zone. And sometimes it's hard to do that, but if we don't, you know, what's the alternative? So talking to others who have a successful business may help propel you to your goal in a much quicker way, because you may be able to replicate some of their strategies and action steps. And the whole discussion of Chamber of Commerce this morning was a good idea, because you know, they already know people who have done certain things, and they can help you or guide you to the right people. One of the best things that we can do is ask questions and research and find out who already knows. Maybe they know something that we need to know, or maybe we know something that they need to know. So another thing I want to talk about briefly is communication. Absolutely key to your success. And I love Stephen Covey, who's written the book 7 Habits of the Highly Effective Person. He calls it seek to understand. So, you know, when you're in a conversation with someone that perhaps in your business or as you're building, you know, we can't just like listen. And that was part of the resilience building leadership material too. It's got to be dialogue. It's got to be, you know, you say what you say, and then you make sure they understand what you're saying, so that things are not left on the table and everyone knows, you know, what's being discussed. So we can often tolerate things for a short time that we would not be able to tolerate over a long period of time. And you know, when we're building a business, it's not always easy. I know even with my business, even though it was small compared to many, I spent hours and didn't have, you know, much free time the several months I was getting started. But we, when we tolerate things for a short time, it's sort of, I like to call it short-term sacrifice for long-term gain. And, we can do those things. John Maxwell, who I mentioned earlier, says teachability is an attitude, a mindset that says no matter how much I know or I think I know, I can learn from any situation. And that type of thinking can help us turn something that's a difficult or adverse situation into an advantage. It can make us a winner even in the most difficult circumstances. Also, ask others if they know someone you should talk to or someone that you should meet. Connect people with one another. Any good we put out in this world is going to come back to us. And we don't do it for that reason, but it really does happen. How can I help others? So another thing I want to mention, I kind of alluded to this earlier, is keep things simple. I like the acronym KISS. I had a principal that he would say, keep it simple, stupid, but I just kind of have shortened it to keep it simple. And, that's something that we can do, is keep it as simple as we can and still accomplish our goal. So as we're thinking about earlier, we talked a little bit about our vision and our goals. David Belasco said, if you can't write your idea on the back of a business card, you probably don't have a clear idea. I thought that was, really pretty powerful. Sometimes we make things too complicated. So as we're working towards our business, we need to think, we get kind of overwhelmed with family and with, what's going on in society. But am I dedicated to removing distractions and mental clutter so I can concentrate on the real issue? Maybe get out an empty notebook, start writing things that come to your mind. And this is kind of a psychological concept here, but sometimes we can fool ourselves by staying busy. We might find 100 things we need to do to avoid actually getting started and getting right down to it. We may be busy, but not productive. That can actually be fear or a form of self-sabotage. So, after you start writing things down, you can start organizing your ideas. I know, when I was in a situation as a school or a county administrator, I had a lot of projects, and kind of those messy projects where, like, you have everything spread out. I'd have things spread out on a 10-foot table, and then I just have to start sorting through them and get things organized. And we can even do that, just on paper. Be creative. That's such a big deal. So if you're thinking about the type of business you want to do, stop and think about the skills and knowledge you already have up to this point. So every business started with an idea. Post-its, Frisbees, silly putty, Levi's, shopping carts. So one I want to mention is Irish soap. And you may know this, but it was actually an accident. The air was introduced into the soap, I guess you'd call it liquid batter. And not long after that, ladies in the country were asking for the soap that floats. So, sometimes even an accident can lead to a new product. It's really funny. My 14-year-old granddaughter just started it was in the beginnings of starting a business selling jewelry. The really interesting thing, her debut was in this very building that I'm in Saturday. And I didn't even know I was going to be in this building until 2 days ago. And it's like, wow, I just thought how cool that was. She's very artistic. She sold 40 pair of earrings and has orders for more. She's super creative, and she tied her jewelry in with plants. And, I think she sold, I need to ask her, but I think she sold some plants that had like the earrings hanging on the plants. So it was like creative combining. So she, as a 14-year-old pushed out and, tried something, and it came from something she enjoyed that she was able to monetize. So as you're thinking about your job, what does your community need? So I always like to think about concrete examples. The guy that built my house, I found out later, we hired somebody to bring in a crane to do the trusses on the roof, because it was a 2-story house. But it was hard to find people to do that. So he ended up buying a crane for his own homes that he was building, as well as others, because he saw a need. And sometimes we can do that, see a need and then fill it. Find a talking partner who will ask you questions about your business. Even if they're not in your field, they can maybe help you think about things in a little bit different way. And, you know, as a consultant, I do a lot of, I have a lot of conversations with people in the area of leadership. But what I have found, they may be in a completely different industry, but I'm able to ask questions that maybe make them think about things in a little bit different way. Again, it's that value and synergy of two or three minds coming together. So I'm going to mention a book, and here's my one prop, Think and Grow Rich by Napoleon Hill. If you haven't read it, it would be a good book to get you started thinking about some things that you need to do. It's classic. It was written nearly 100 years ago. It's very thought-provoking, and I didn't agree with everything in it, but it really made me think in a different way. One thing he's talked about was the power of thoughts. And he shared that thoughts are things. And I'm like, well, how could a thought be a thing? But then I heard another gentleman who used to be the president of the John Maxwell team, and he had a rags to riches story, but he compared thoughts to radio waves. So think about it. You go in a room and you have a radio on that's off. You turn it on and music plays. Well, the waves were there all the time, but you were not accessing those waves until you turn that knob on. And really thoughts are kind of that way too. They're out there, and you know, we have to capture those thoughts. So I just thought that that was really interesting. So you think about it, everything in existence started with a thought. You can't think of anything that didn't start with a thought. So maybe you'll have a thought that's unique. And Napoleon Hill, the author of Think and Grow Rich, said, and listen to this carefully, more gold has been mined from the thoughts of men than has ever been taken from the earth. And is that not powerful? So as we go forward, we can ask a critical friend to give us feedback on things that we can improve. One of my other good friends, Ruth, she's a former school superintendent, she said, my best friends are my critics. And I remember when she said that, I'm like, okay, Ruth, talk to me about that. And she explained, you know, the situation she was in. But, you know, if we don't get feedback from people, sometimes we're kind of fooling ourselves. And that can be true in a personal life or in a business life. Another term I like to think about is the term calculated risks. What risks am I willing to take that might be out of my comfort zone that could propel me to a much higher level? And you know, I have done that. I mean, you know, again, some of the things that I did, some of the things I'm getting to do now, I probably would have never believed that I would get to do. But it's like, once you sort of start things into action, as long as you're working hard and you're humble and people know you care, it seems like things just sort of materialize. And, you know, it just takes a life of its own. So I want to talk about some other essential entrepreneurial leadership skills. And this goes back to Paul, as he talked this morning. We must know the basics of how businesses operate. That is something I definitely didn't know much about. So I've learned, but I still have more to learn. As we navigate building businesses, it'll be critical to focus on building trusting relationships with customers, possibly employees or suppliers. We need to have the ability to motivate our employees to feel like they matter. And this is so big. And I was on LinkedIn this morning, and I read this little, just a quick post that a guy put on, and he said, so if you're trying to motivate your employees, think about how you would treat your customers and the positive things that you would say to them, and then make sure that you're talking to your employees the same way so that they feel like they matter. When when employees are treated respectfully and when they're trusted, they will certainly be more engaged. So some of my resilience building leadership material told about a story about a gentleman who owned a company. It was an oil company, and they had oil wells, and he had told his employees, as long as you're doing your job and you're working hard, you will never be let go. You will have a job for life. So when these guys went out to look for oil, you know, they kept looking, and they couldn't find it. They couldn't find the repository, you know, where they thought it would be. And they almost quit. And, you know, their comment was, Had we not had a boss or an owner who had told us your job is secure, we probably would have quit. We probably would have stopped because we were spending a lot of money trying to find that spot. But they continued and they found it. So, it's like, wow, that value came back to them and to the owner. So, that was just kind of an interesting concept, but trust is invaluable. Creating an atmosphere that's conducive to growth. We want people to be able to share and thrive. If you work in a plant and maybe you're running a machine or whatever, and the owner of the plant, and a friend of mine told me that this just happened to him just this week. The owner came and was asking him about how people were feeling about the required vaccination because it was a government plant. When people are asked questions, they feel valued and they feel like they have a contribution that matters and they're going to be more engaged. I know the second principal I worked for, I remember he would come into my classroom and he would be like, oh my gosh, what you're doing is so great. I didn't even realize what he was kind of doing was positive reinforcement because I was pretty young and naive. But I just know that when he appreciated what I was doing, it just made me work 3 times as hard. So, it's just something that I can share with you. So another important tip is there's no reason to reinvent the wheel when there's so many resources out there giving you information related to starting your business as well as your specific area. We're all in different places. And another thing to think about, if you already have an income, that's a little different situation than someone who is investing everything and taking that risk. They still have family expenses and, that's challenging. Fortunately, I did have another income as I was starting to build my business, and I need the extra income, but it wasn't like I didn't have enough money to, buy my gas and groceries. That would be really tough. So on the John Maxwell team, when they talk about business building, they call it being hungry for success. And I can understand that, if your family's on the line, you're going to be pretty hungry for success. So when failure strikes, we need to learn from our mistakes, overcome obstacles, realize there may be financial insecurity, long, hard hours. So who will want to purchase our product or service? Who are they? What will they think? The more we know about them, the better off that we will be. How can I advertise or package my product to help people understand what they will gain from the purpose or from the purchase? And, with me, it's like, I don't have a tangible product people can put in their hand. My product is, more learning and more networking and working together and learning a new skill set, or I go in and I offer a team building session. So it's a little bit different than actually, if I have a beautiful wood sculpture in my hand. So, we kind of have to think about that and how we're going to do it. So I like this quote: the right thought plus the right people in the right environment at the right time for the right reason equals the right result. I'm going to read it again because there's a lot in that. The right thought, and we talked about the power of thoughts, the right people in the right environment at the right time, there's that timing piece, for the right reason equals the right result. So that's kind of what we're looking for. So one little tip I want to share with you, it's funny because the one gentleman, Daniel, who I trained, that was the Marine that had been all over the world, along with the resilience building leadership content, I think one of the things he was the most excited about was this tip I'm going to share with you. And maybe you've already done this, but when I'm creating a document that's going to have a lot of writing or I'm doing a lot of research, I have figured out that if I go to my phone and I pull up an email, I basically read what instead of typing it, I read it and I do voice to text. And then when I'm done, I open my email up on my laptop, and then I cut and paste to a Word doc. And then I go through the Word doc and I can rearrange things if I want to, or I can make because you know how voice to text is. Sometimes it doesn't always say what it wants us to say. We want it to say. And then it's like, I probably save at least 75% of the time. So, like my information today is about 14 pages. you know, I probably was able to do that as far as actually getting it down on paper in about 25% of the time that it would have taken me. What took me time was every time I went through it, I found things I wanted to add or I wanted to change. So I probably went through this presentation, I don't know, 6 or 8 times. But I wanted to make sure that, you know, it had things that would be helpful, you know, to each one of you. So that's my tip. So if you haven't tried that, give it a try, because it's really pretty easy. So just have a little bit more. So what about when we get discouraged? What about when we feel like we can't do one more thing toward this business or maybe another area of your life? I read an article about a military unit just recently that had been bombed, and a senior leader told a junior leader to go get in the Jeep and drive. The junior leader said, "But I've been injured by a bullet." The senior officer said, "We've all been injured by a bullet. Get in the Jeep and drive." Well, that sounds pretty tough, but that's the kind of tenacity I can't even quite imagine. But it's a good model for us to think about, you know, when we want to give up. You know, I think about the little story, you know, when we were children about the train that was trying to go up the hill. And I'm sure you remember that. You know, he's like, "I can't go up that hill." And then he's like, "I think I can. I think I can. I know I can." And I remember how much that affected me as a child, and times in my life that I didn't think, and that makes me teary, things that I didn't think I could do. You know, I persevered and pushed on. And sometimes, you know, we just have to do that. And even if it's thinking about a little childhood book, you know, it doesn't matter as long as it helps us. Another thought I'd like to leave you with is get comfortable with being uncomfortable. Things are not always easy in life or business, and we just have to be tenacious, do what we can. We can't control what someone else does. We can only control what we're doing. So when I think about inspiration, I'd like for you to check out, do a little research on Leonardo da Vinci. I mean, you know, we're talking 1400s. Some of the things that he came up with, because, you know, we think, oh, well, I can't come up with anything new. He came up with the barrel cannon automatic weapon, the idea of the helicopter, the airplane, which he called a winged flying machine, diving equipment, a self-propelled car. It was actually a cart, but he said it was self-propelled, the parachute, the robot. And, you know, I find myself thinking, if he came up with things like that 600 years ago, why are we not able to think of more things? I don't think everything's been invented. I think there's still more out there. So, you know, we need to be creative and push ourselves out there to think about new things. So World War I flying ace Eddie Rickenbacker said, "I can give you a 6-word formula for success." And I think he's very wise. Think things through, then follow through. Kind of like basketball, you know, I hear my kids say, their coach would say, "You got to follow through." Well, you know, we've got to follow through, not just in foul shots. We've got to follow through in life. And, you know, we've got to come up with the idea, and then we have to, you know, figure out how to get it done. So there's John Maxwell in one of his books said, there are 3 questions he says I found valuable. And this is something I want you to think about right now. What did I learn today? What can I take out of this? There's surely something that you were able to take out of this. What should I share with someone else that I found out? Because I learned some things this morning with the previous speakers that I will share. What must I do? What do I need to do next? Socrates said the unexamined life is not worth living. If we reflect on our actions, our thoughts, and our plans, we're going to be a lot more likely to be equipped to move forward in our own business or in life. And the reason I say that is so many of the concepts that we talk about in forming a business are the same kind of concepts we're going to be using as we go forward with a project or in some area of life. So always be looking for like ideas. So last week I was driving on a road near my home, and I noticed a large concrete bridge where previously there was none. And it was being constructed over a little small creek leading up to a property that probably previously had not been accessible. Someone had to have a vision. They had to have a vision to buy the property. They had to find somebody who would build it. And the contractor had to have the idea to build the company, to build the bridge. I mean, these are all ideas. Together, they achieved, it's a pretty look, I mean, like, gosh, I wanted to stop and talk to them about it. It was like, it was pretty impressive. And they did a neat job. So together they worked and they solved a problem, and it will allow this property to be developed, and will probably put money in the pocket of the owner. I'm not sure what they're going to do with it, but also with the bank contractor as well as his employees. So these are the kinds of things, when we stop and notice, can give us inspiration for our future endeavors. Think about what's needed in your community or even in a larger geographical area. And I love the idea. I think a coffee shop like this in every small town would be wonderful, because not only does it provide coffee, which I love, by the way, but it also provides people an opportunity to have good conversation and to learn from each other. Because isn't that what it's all about? Is, you know, people coming together and sharing and you know, giving ideas. I know, I'm positive that when two people come together, or three people or four people come together, you're going to get like so much more out of, you know, I can read a book and, you know, Lisa can read a book. But when we talk about it, we're going to come up with something together that neither of us had ever thought of. So talk to others, ask, you know, what do you need? What's missing in the community? What do you have to drive 2 hours to get? And another thing, do you remember the video craze when you know, the whole video thing came out, and pretty soon, I mean, there had to be one person that started the first video business. Pretty soon there was a video and later CD business in every small town. And I like the term creative combining. There would be like a laundromat and a video store together, or maybe a little country grocery store that would have a video section. And you know, those have largely gone away. So now we have Redbox. And of course, so we have online capabilities with, I use Amazon Prime, and then Netflix, and you know, of course, there's others. Things evolve and change. What can you think about? What's one of the questions I like to ask in my leadership experience is, what do we need to think about now to be prepared for next year? And Paul shared some things we need to be thinking about, practical things as far as taxes and, you know, places we need to show in our taxes, our expenses, or et cetera. But what's happening? There's a lot going on in this world right now. What can we possibly do in our personal life to prepare, or possibly in building a business? You know, the whole Bitcoin thing, is there something that you can do related to that? I mean, I think it's really, really important to read widely so that you know what's going on in the world. I know I have one friend who's like, I don't ever read anything. I'm just living life. I don't care what's going on in the news. I don't read anything that, you know, other than just what I have to read. And that's okay. That's their choice. But I'm just the opposite. I want to learn about everything that's going on. I want to read about what's going on, because oftentimes that triggers us to think about something that we wouldn't have normally thought about. So in closing, we need to stay open to the input around us to help propel us and be more focused in our life. None of us has all the answers. We have to look beyond ourselves for encouragement and resources. I hope and pray that the content from this session in some way will prepare you to move forward in your business and life endeavors. And this is my money back guarantee. If there's a way I can support you in that goal, reach out to me. You know, we'll brainstorm. Together, we can achieve more. My wish for you is that you go forward and that you're successful in life and in business. And that I hope that after our session this morning with the previous speakers and myself, maybe having a successful business is a little bit less of a mystery after today's session. So please go forward with confidence and excitement, because passion matters. And hopefully you've picked up a few new tools and ideas. And thank you for being patient with me as I went through this presentation. Have a great day.
Good job.
All right. Well, that concludes our seminar for today. I did put everybody's name, all the speakers and their email in the chat. Diane from First State Bank is having some difficulties, so she.
Can you hear me?
Oh, are you there, Diane?
I was able to get on my personal phone.
Okay, great. Yeah, okay. You go right ahead.
Sorry about that.
That's okay.
All right. So again, like Lisa said, I'm Diane from First State Bank. I work at the Georgetown Banking Center. Currently, First State Bank has 17 locations, and 4 of those being in Brown County. We have one in Georgetown, Ripley, Mount Orb, and Fayetteville. We pride ourselves in being like a local bank, small town bank. We get involved in the community very often. We love giving back to our community, and that's what being a small town bank, I think, helps. We offer a lot of great personal and business products. Some of our personal checking products are, they earn higher interest rates, give you cash back on your purchases with certain qualifiers. We also have savings, CDs, IRAs, loans, credit cards, and identity theft. Another product like the business product that we have checking accounts that fit small sole proprietor businesses up into the larger corporations. We also offer commercial loans, business credit cards, cash management program, remote deposit capture, and business services such as offering credit cards to your business clients, things of that nature. And if you have any questions, like I said, I'm located at the Georgetown branch. I put my contact information in the comment section if you ever want to get a hold of me.
Okay. All right. Thank you, Diane. I'm glad you were able to join.
Thank you.
All
Me
right.
too.
Okay, well, that concludes our seminar for the day. Thank you to all the speakers. I appreciate it. And that was a lot of good information. So we will see you next year, and goodbye and have a great day.
In person, maybe.
Hopefully.
There's some places that are doing it in person.